Okay, we are live.
Okay, let's call to order the OpenJS Foundation board meeting for August the 23rd.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Up on the screen here is the board directory. We have various members here. I believe the only member who we don't have today is Charlie Robbins. And up on the screen right now is our 2019 meeting schedule. As a reminder, we meet on the fourth Friday of the month at or around 2 p.m. Eastern. And the next meeting is on September 27th. And then we're also meeting October 25th and November 22nd. The agenda for today, we will approve the meeting minutes from the last board meeting. We will give a brief update on the event plans for 2019 and some early plans on 2020. Chris Borchers has an update on the CPC. There are a number of updates to the CPC charter as well that we'll discuss. And I will give a quick update on where we are as a transition, the merger of the two organizations. And then Rachel Romov will give a marketing update. Does anybody have any changes or additions on the agenda? Okay. So I mentioned this in the last call, but again, bears mentioning, welcome back to Sauce Labs and welcome to the Foundation, Vincent. Both joined as silver members over the summer, so we'd like to welcome them. And our first order of business is to approve the July 24th board meeting minutes. So board, you have received the meeting minutes. Does anybody have any changes or any discussion on them? All right, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the minutes?
So motioned.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Any abstains?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, the motion carries. All right, moving on. Quick update on the event here. As everybody should hopefully be aware now, we are having the 2019 Node+JS Interactive in Montreal, December 10th through 12th. We are also in the process of planning a 2020 event, had been looking initially for some locations also in Canada. During the private session of the board call, we discussed having, discussed dates a little bit, and we are looking at potentially moving this back a little bit earlier in the year, looking at some times that would be early, mid, late summer, potentially early fall, but avoiding the certain months where it's likely that people would be on vacation. Board, do we have any discussion on the events or anything you'd like to bring up? Okay. Well, and I just would also say here as well, thank you to our sponsors, the first sponsors who have come through. We have Red Hat, Sentry, Linode, and NodeRun. So if you are part of an organization and you would like to sponsor the event, we would love to have you. You can either go to that link or you can reach out to me, Brian Warner. You can reach me at operations@openjsf.org, and I'll be happy to connect you with the right people.
Well, we talked about also giving people the heads up that we are looking for new dates for Node+JS Interactive for 2020, right?
Yep.
And so there's an expanded date range. We'd like to get out of December, and the events team is out actively seeking other dates and other locations.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on, the next item on the agenda is a CPC update. So we have Chris Borchers, who is the CPC director. Chris, would you like to tell us about what's happening on the CPC?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd also encourage Michael to jump in
Sure.
as well. As we've been working on for a while. The project charters, the template has been drafted and is still under review, and is working through that process. So hopefully we will have charter for projects to use soon. Michael, I'll actually ask you to jump in on the
Sure.
code and
Yeah, so the discussions on the code and learn, Node has done code and learns, and in particular, either with or separately from the Node+JS interactive sessions. The discussion was to see if, it started out as like, should that be moved up to more of an OpenJS effort and cover other projects? Initial discussions seemed to be that, maybe it's run its course in terms of doing it for Node, and so that could make sense. But there's work and discussion around what that would mean, what it would look like. And, there's even the possibility that there might not be one this year, simply because it'll take some time to figure out what it would look like.
Great. There's also an initial proposal that's been sent in to establish an OpenJS travel fund. So for those that are familiar, the Node.js project has had a travel fund for a while now. And the idea here is to potentially expand that out to an OpenJS wide travel fund. And so that proposal is working through our proposal process now.
And I think we're hoping to conclude like sort of feedback from the Node project, the TSC and ComCom by the end of this week. So it's getting close to the point where it can move forward.
Right. Okay. And then just to make sure everyone is aware, so the voting members on the CPC initial terms were set to end March 31st. And then from there, they will be annual terms. That date was just set when we were bootstrapping the CPC, just to get voting members in place so that we could move forward. And now, once we move beyond that March 31st date, they will be annual terms for the voting members.
Yeah, the goal was that because we tend to have a collaborator summit twice a year, it was to give the people time to have come on board before the collaborator summit, the next collaborator summit, and March 31st was chosen based on historical times to give a couple months of leeway for that.
Yep, exactly. All right. We've also started discussions around project infrastructure. So historically, the Node.js project has managed its own infrastructure. A number of the JS Foundation projects have managed their own infrastructure to different degrees of success. And so now the discussions are happening around, is there infrastructure that the foundation could offer, both in terms of actual infrastructure resources as well as person power to help manage infrastructure? Do projects want paid help, or would they prefer to maintain that infrastructure themselves? And so there's a lot of different aspects of managing infrastructure from a project security standpoint, and also just project ability. Do the people involved in the project have the abilities to manage their own infrastructure, and in some cases even to determine what infrastructure needs they have. So that discussion is definitely ongoing. Would you add anything, Michael?
No, I think it's basically that, we see this as something that the foundation could add value on, but like you mentioned, there's a lot of different aspects in terms of what will make sense to projects. So we're starting to get together and bring all those perspectives together and figure out what we think could make sense.
Great. We're still working through the code of conduct report handling at the CPC level, and sort of what that process will look like. In the meantime, projects are still, as part of the application processing, encouraged to adopt the OpenJS Foundation Code of Conduct and have their own report handling processes in place, which would then, if necessary, have the CPC process as an escalation path.
Right. We have a stage 0 proposal or a stage 1 proposal that's currently, like, this work is to update it to add it explains the external interaction, you know, so it's got report emails and so I think today there's a way where escalation could be done, and we're trying to add the documentation of what happens when we get one of those reports. And that may affect what the external, you know, reporting process is as well. But I just want to clarify a little bit that, you know, I think today we do have something that, you know, somebody could use to escalate if there was an issue. We're just trying to complete the back end that says, okay, if that happens, make sure that we have a streamlined process for handling those reports.
Right, exactly. And then the final item here is, now that we do have a approved application process, we have started receiving some applications from potential new projects, and so those are currently under review. The process begins with a silent period, so CPC is having conversations with those projects right now, and as they progress, we will report back. Any questions or additions to that?
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris and Michael. We can move on to the next topic. CPC charter updates. So there were a number of updates which have been proposed since the last board meeting. Would somebody like to discuss these?
I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. There were a couple of instances where the charter erroneously still referenced TAC as opposed to a CPC when referring to the cross-project council. So this pull request is to update those references.
All right. And then there's also pull request number 305.
And yeah, this one was to basically change the term within the CPC charter, change the term maintainers to governing body, because maintainers could have different definitions to different projects or different people, whereas governing body was a little more generic term that would cover the group governing the project. So.
Okay. Board, do we have any questions about these changes? Or any discussion?
And then just to be clear, the reason we're bringing this up is because these are CPC charter changes, so they need board approval.
Yeah.
Also, while we have the previous one has gone through like the entire like consensus seeking and time process, so it's ready to land. This one, number 305, well, it's been brought up at a meeting, has not been brought up at a meeting with quorum. We do have consensus on it right now, but there is still a bit of time for the project side before this one can land. But we wanted to, you know, get the board stamp in advance. So as long as there's no additional changes, we can move forward with the changes that exist.
Yep. Thank you, Miles.
It's consistent with what we expected. Is any discussion anybody wants to have?
Okay.
So are you looking for a formal approval with a vote?
So this is actually, I think, an interesting one to bring up. For the first change that's like basic errata, traditionally, at least when we were over at Node, all of these changes, even errors, required board approval in a meeting. I would actually like to make a motion for any substantive changes or errata to be able to be approved via email.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. But as you indicated, you really weren't all final on your side of this.
For the errata one, we are.
An egg, I guess.
For the errata one, we are. And we're actually in the process of trying to document some process over in the CPC to allow us to fast track things that are non-substantive. So I'm curious if the board could have a similar process to align.
We'll just note that the bylaws do allow us to take any vote by email. So I think this would be treated the same way. And if we would prefer to do this over email, then I'm happy to coordinate that.
I would be happy to do that over email, honestly.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because that way it means it doesn't have to wait, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that I'm clear on the process here then, when this has completed the CPC process, the review period, is that when you would like to have the vote over email?
That would work for me. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to wait on the previous one since that one already has consensus, or?
I think 275 can land right now, personally.
Yeah, so that one I would just say, let's just have the vote, and then when the other one's done, we can do the vote through email.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, can you, what was it, 270? Can you flip back to the last slide just so I can see?
Sure.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to replace TAC with CPC in the CPC charter via pull request 275.
Seconded.
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Do we have any abstains? Okay, the motion carries. This is now approved. Chris and Michael, would you be able to take us back to the CPC?
Yep.
Yep, we'll take it back, and then we'll do the other PR via email once we have consensus.
Sounds good. Okay, I will give a brief update on where we are with the transition. Not a whole lot of major changes or visible changes here recently, although there has been a fair amount of work on the back end. The main thing that we're working on right now is creating harmonized guidance on things like trademark policy and IP policy and so forth. This is currently under review with the board, and there's a fair amount of work involved here in getting these reviews done. If you are waiting to see the outcome of this, rest assured that the work is ongoing, and we will have this out as soon as we can. Moving on to, one more slide here. Communication channels, we discussed this in the last meeting, but just as a reminder to everybody, we are working to operate it openly and transparently and have discussions wherever we can in places that are accessible. The best place to start, if you're looking for an index of the various things that you can join or communications channels you can join, is on openjsf.org/collaboration. And we will keep this updated. If there are any projects that have Slack channels they would like to have added, or GitHub repos or mailing lists or anything like that, please do reach out to me at operations@openjsf.org. I can also help set up this infrastructure for projects as well that are hosted by the foundation. And then finally, we have the marketing update. Rachel, would you like to take us through what's happening on the marketing side?
Sure thing. So yeah, I'll go through this pretty quickly because we're just out of time. So the schedule has gone live with Node+JS Interactive, and keynotes will be announced here in the coming weeks. So we can move on to the next slide. Just a quick snapshot of our content and thought leadership initiatives. We are up and running on our OpenJS Foundation blog. We've got a ton of good content coming out. We're really doing a great job of building that content pipeline. Here are just some blog metrics. As you can see, Node+JS Interactive is performing really, really well, so that's awesome to see. If there are no questions on this slide, we can move on to social media. So social media, what we're seeing is a correlation between our blog activity and our follower gain, which is interesting to see. So we'll continue to post regularly on the blog and hopefully continue to grow our Twitter audience. We'll also be looking at standing up a LinkedIn account here, in the next probably few weeks or so. Our subscribers to YouTube, we're up about 16 folks in the last 28 days. We'll continue to push that out over Twitter. That seems to give us a little bit of a boost. So that's what we're seeing over social. And then the next slide, if there are no questions here, we can go to the next slide. So this is the Node project social. We've been sort of reporting out on this over the last several months. This is basically a snapshot. The one thing that I did want to point out is we are really performing very, very well on LinkedIn, and we continue to do so. I did a little bit of diving into this, and it seems like technical content performed amazing over there. So, we'll continue to post that type of content because that seems to be what that audience is really craving, as you can tell from the follower change is just pretty substantial. And I believe that's our last slide. Yep.
Okay, very good. Board, do we have any additional discussion here for today? Okay, with that, I think we can probably call the meeting to a close.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we're going to lose folks as well. So I want to thank everybody who attended, both our board members, any members of the audience, and the staff again for the great work in putting this together and helping us get through this. So thank you. Let's conclude the OpenJS Foundation board meeting for today. Thank you.